sportinglife.com, providing unrivaled sporting opinion, debate, tips and analysis for over 160 years.
Welcome along to the Sporting Life Racing podcast. Not only is it all change on the panel this week, a running order change too. No weekend preview as Jack Frost is starting to bite around the country and over in Ireland, but replacing Ed Chamberlain and Billy Nash this week, I needed one person who could cover both roles. Gravitas and an Irish expert. We couldn't find him. We've got Fran Berry. Fran has kindly joined us for the podcast. Fran, I'm going to start with you because there's so much good action in Ireland recently. The rescheduled Lawlers of Naas took place on Friday. Big moment for Davil Jacob, winning on Reading Tommy Wrong, reading in Elan T. What did you make of that race?
It was great to, first of all, it was back on Friday, Dave. I think that's one thing we've got in Ireland is an ability to reschedule races, quite quickly. And it was an important step in the calendar to have the Lawlers on. And we learned plenty about a lot of horses in the race. I suppose Firefox, first of all, did he run a race too bad to be true? Maybe he didn't stay. There was reports he didn't scope right after the race, but it was a lackluster run by him based on his maiden hurl win, of course. But reading Tommy Wrong, he had some reform, obviously won a bumper at Ballinrobe in good style. And trainer Willie Mullins on his column, Sport Life column, the Friday before the original race, did say don't dismiss this horse, that he's far better than his bare form. And to my jargon, I backed him at 33-1 each way last Sunday. And of course, there was 8 runners with Mystical City declared, and with 7 runners on Friday. I gave it a skip because there's more important things in Dundalk as well, wasn't there? So that was the Lawlers for me in a nutshell. But I think it was a really good performance. I loved the way he warmed up into the race, and he didn't get in cleanly over the last 2 hurls, but he still found plenty under pressure. It sounds like Connections would like to go up and trip probably to the 3-mile race, the Albert Bartlett, and he's open to more improvement. Ilan Lantique, he was all the talk and all the rage, and does he find as much as you think under pressure? I don't know. He tends to travel well. He got beaten a bumper by Firefox at Naas last year, and he just seems to get found out by the hills somewhat. So I think I'd always be a little bit wary about him under pressure, but the winner definitely open to more improvement. Lecky Watson, is he working his way into something like a Martin Pipe horse or something maybe just below the radar? At some point he could be dangerous, and they're well clear of the rest of them. But I think it was an informative race, but the winner is the one I'd like in the longer term, I think.
I think Lecky Watson, he came alive in that big bumper, big field. He looks to sort of would thrive in handicap, doesn't he? A big field handicap somewhere in the spring. GC, we saw Mystical Power then go favourite for the Sky Bet Supreme, winning the Moscow Flyer. Big pedigree, big owners. Lots of pressure. He's been a slow burner, but he looks to be getting there now.
Yeah. The way I'd sum him up, he's you can see him almost learning on the job that, I'm by Galileo out of Annie Power. And the brilliance is slowly coming out, but it is a slow burner. And I think he does look really good now. The way he settled that, admittedly against a small field, was really impressive. But the Supreme is hopefully going to be a much, much bigger field. And I think the idea of giving him one more race is absolutely spot on. And it seems to me the Dublin Racing Festival is going to be completely pivotal in shaping certainly 2 of the big novice hurdles at the Cheltenham Festival. And I don't think anyone can take a really confident view until we've seen Mystical Power, Colwell Potter, and all, a lot of the other good ones bang heads against each other in what are proper Group 1 races on the first weekend in February. But no, he's still a bit raw, but he seems to be improving fast now, Mystical Power, I think.
David, he had a big number for a single sort of summer novice hurdle timeform number going into the Moscow Flyer. Big P as well. He's retained a P. He's 143p, I think, £4 below Colwell Potter, the highest rated novice hurdler at the minute. Is he one who's towards your highest pecking order for the big Cheltenham novice?
He's doing everything right at the minute, isn't he? Just going the right way. I think, like you say, that rating of 143p, I think that makes him the joint 4th highest novice hurdler behind Coldwell Potter, Farron Glory and Django Bay. they're the only three that are higher at the moment. And I think the impressive thing is it's what he's doing in between the hurdles, isn't it, rather than the way that he's getting over them. So, there is the scope for him to improve even further as his jumping improves. But, the way that he settled that race at the weekend with the turn of foot between the last two was impressive. And, he's entitled to do that, isn't he? We talk about these horses and what they've achieved, but he's one of those horses that we don't know where the limit of his ability is with that pedigree. He's obviously out of Any Power by Galileo. It's very hard to think that you could get a better bred horse for jumping. So, yeah, everything he's done at the moment is pointing to him being a leading contender, but he is only 4-1, isn't he? And as GC was saying, there's so much more that we're going to learn about these horses between now and the festival that it's hard to sort of take a price of 4-1 with a great deal of confidence, I think, at the minute.
Scoop, I thought Patrick was interested on Mystical Powers jumping yesterday when he pointed out that he'd done loads of pre-training with Ender Bolger, loads of jumping there, loads of schooling at Close Sutton, and that this might just be the way that he gets from A to B over the obstacles, that they might not be able to brush it up significantly.
Yeah, I mean, his jumping was novice, wasn't it, at Punchestown, particularly early on. But I thought he warmed to his task as he went through the race. And I thought that he was sort of learnt as much as he possibly could do in a forerunner grade 2, if that makes any sense. The way he finished his race sort of obviously tells you the talent he's got, and we know that the potential he's got from his breeding. And I just look at him and he just looks like a horse to me that will improve a ton for a bigger field in a stronger pace. And you can absolutely see why he's made his way to the head of the Supreme Market on the back of that.
But you were on the trophy presentation duties. After that, Sky, it was a familiar face receiving the trophy.
Yeah, I had to pitch up and earn my free lunch, Dave, as Sky Bet sponsor. But it was an enjoyable day out at Punchestown, just on Mystical Power. I suppose Galway, long time off the track since he won the festival there, but they were easy fix hurls that he raced over on that occasion. It was first time actually encountering normal style of hurls at Punchestown, so a little bit of a learning curve there as well. I was in the stands looking at him live, and visually the race maybe fell apart a little bit. Lombron was very well backed, Willie Mullins was other runner, but that overdrive that we've seen at Galway, and again we've seen at Punchestown, the last 300 metres when he engages it, it's very, very impressive, and you can only think the best is yet to come. But I would give him the benefit of doubt on his jumping. I treat him more like his debut run than actually his second start over hurls. He will learn plenty in Galway, but different style, different ground as well, trying to get out at deep winter ground. I think he'll learn plenty.
Yeah, it's a fascinating prospect, isn't it? GC, we saw the Silviano Conti at Kempton. Banbridge, winning seasonal debut, picked up Pete Dorey late. Edwardstone back to the drawing board. Banbridge for the Ryanair, just a second favourite behind Allaho now.
Well, he's a solid place contender at least, doesn't he? Because we know he's dead consistent. Good ground would be a big plus for him, it seems. He missed last year's festival when it turned wet, made amends at Aintree, and he's gonna go there as a good jumper, smooth traveller, highly consistent. I don't think he's not got that really tip-top rating on his dance card yet, but he's the type of horse who can take advantage when perhaps more brilliant horses don't quite deliver on the day. And that's what he'll be hoping for, or his connections will be hoping for with Allaho. If Allaho is feeling the pinch slightly, then the likes of Banbridge is a perfectly viable contender. He's a really, really likeable horse, isn't he?
It's a race that could be blown out. If Allaho is down to run on Sunday, I thought it was quite interesting at Thurles, but Allaho in, so we're going to potentially be seeing him again at the weekend. But he's been a stone below his peak in 2 runs this season now on time phone numbers. Do you like the look of the shape of the Ryanair from a punting perspective?
Yeah, it's pretty complex puzzle at the minute, isn't it? Because I think you've got to look at Allaho and think perhaps he is past his best at his age, judging by what we've seen this season in the King George and at Clonmel. And so, yeah, I think horses aren't going to be scared of taking him on like perhaps they would have been in the past. And Banbridge has settled into second place in the market, and you can understand why, because it was a really good performance first time up, wasn't it, against a race fit course specialist in Pete Dorey, who ran just about as well as he can do, I think, in second. So You can see why he's in there at 5-1. Would I back him at that price? I wouldn't, because of, like GC says, he was pulled out last year at the festival because of the soft ground. I think he's a horse that needs those spring conditions. And has he achieved more than, say, Stage Star, who put up a big performance on his own seasonal reappearance at Cheltenham? I don't think he did, really. So he's respected, but not for me at the prices.
David, the John Bond project, one or two worrying signs. Anthony Bodman said if Ascot's called off before Thursday morning, when they've have to put him on a ferry, he could come for the rearranged race, but it would need to be the same prize money as the original if they were to restage the Clarence House at Cheltenham. That hasn't been the case in the past. So the clash with El Fabiolo and the possible catapult into the Ryanair, we might not see it now.
Yeah, that does sound a concern definite, and that was always the risk, wasn't it? That we needed really John Bond to run into El Fabiolo and sort of be shown that he's not quite up to that level. So yeah, we're in the lap of the weather gods, as we have been so many times this season already.
Well, we've got John Catley on our side as we battle these weather gods. As always, hope with a bespoke forecast or two. Fran, been a good week, well, a mixed week. I don't know why I came up with good for the Willie Mullins Novice Chasers. Start with a good and Hunter's Yarn. He made that mistake again, but he's brilliant everywhere apart from that one fence, isn't he?
He is, and he's a huge engine, Dave. If you take out his one poor run in the Supreme Novice last year, you came back and obviously got just beat at Fairyhouse. He's got a huge engine. He was going to be very impressive on debut when he took a hard fall. And I think in the main, it was good to see him jump so well. He is obviously prone to an error, but I think he's getting better with racing. He'll have learned plenty, and he's clearly got a big engine. I presume all systems go for the Arkle. He's got a big cruising speed, and I think the quicker to go, the more he'll play to his strengths. He'd love to know exactly what went wrong at Cheltenham from last year, but it's much too bad a run to be true, so you can give him a swerve in that. And yeah, he's an exciting prospect, and I don't know where he fits in between now in Cheltenham, whether they go to DRF for that novice chase there, but he's Willie Mullins' best Arkle horse at present, I'd say.
It's quite interesting. He's not. Sorry, Dave. He's not entered at the DRF, and his only Cheltenham entry is the Arkle. So he's one of them that if you're sort of looking to get involved anti-post, you're sort of pretty sure where he's going to turn up. You know, he's not going to switch to the Turners late on. He doesn't look like a 2.5 miler, does he? So given all those other entries for so many of the other Willie Mullins Novice Chasers, at least if you're backing this one for the Arkle, it does look like it's going to be where he's going to turn up.
Would it not worry lads if he was very well fancied for, was the County Hurdle, wasn't it, last year? And he didn't really deliver that day on his, I think it was his first visit to Cheltenham. So that's something to factor in, I think.
GC, what about Blood Destiny? Do you think he's going to go down the 2 mile route after, or did he book into a good one? There's that possibility as well, isn't there?
Yeah, that's possible. Although it's worth mentioning that Spillans Tower was 19.5 lengths behind Facile Vega when they met at Navan. Spillans Tower is coming on really well, obviously. I'm still interested in Blood Destiny, not perhaps as the cream of the crop, but you have to think. I think he's still going to be an exciting horse to watch back at 2 miles, Dave, and going bombs away. Going, because he is a really good jumper. He's a naturally long, quite fluent jumper. But if something gets to him, he seems a little bit, not soft, but doesn't find a massive amount if a horse gets to him. But I think they might have to start thinking about putting races to bed quite early over 2 miles. And that would, it's just a fantastic sight to see a 2 miler who goes like that and puts the pressure on from an early stage. So that would be my thinking with him. Is he an Arkle horse? I have my doubts at the moment. But is he going to be exciting and win some nice races? I'm sure he will.
I just come back to that comment Willie made, Fran, in the column after he'd won on his chasing debut, that he hadn't gone on last season. He was as good the first day as he was for the rest of the season. And he was hoping he'd see him progress with racing this time around. But the jury's still out on that one. Yeah,
and he's a very keen foregoing individual, and is probably getting an uncontested lead when winning his novice chase over 2.5 miles. He was definitely weakened quite markedly. As much as Spillane Tower did pick up well inside the final 2 furlongs at Punchestown, I'd agree with Graham. I can see him not being a UK-style 2-mile chaser. I think will be able to dominate in Ireland in smaller fields where you don't get the pace pressure, Dave, that you do get in the UK over 2 miles. He'll be not quite a shotgun poursuois, but that kind of a horse that can maybe pick up a grade 1 through the season. And when he gets things his own way in front, if somebody jumps off in his boot down over the first couple of fences or puts pace pressure on him from 3 out, I'd be laying him rather than backing him.
Interesting stuff. David, we need to talk Dan Skelton. Good weekend for Dan. He was in Barbados. That's one of the reasons it was a good weekend for Dan. 6 winners on Saturday, a couple of big ones among them. And we've spent a lot of time this podcast this year saying how slow he'd been to get into stride. But you look at the trainers table now, and he's second to Nichols and firing on all cylinders. Are you expecting him to have a good run between now and the festival?
I think he will, won't he? Because what you know with Skelton is that he's just going to keep chipping away, isn't he? Keep ticking along, and he's not scared to run them in the same way as what some other trainers are probably more likely to wrap them in cotton wool. So I was looking at the trainers' statistics, and I think he's had more individual runners than any other trainer, and those individual runners have had more runs as well. And if you work it out as an average, he's run his horses, an average, each individual horse, 2.52 times this season so far, whereas Henderson is 2.02. And surprisingly, given that Nichols also has a reputation of running his horses compared to Henderson, Nichols is only 2.03 as well. So with Skelton, you know what you're going to get. And Grey Dawning is a good example of that, I think, isn't he? He's had 3 runs already. He was really impressive at the weekend, put himself, I think, not necessarily right at the top of the pecking order, but as a real serious contender for a Grade 1 at the Cheltenham Festival. But they're already looking at going to the Scilly Isles on the way as well. So I think the way that they're campaigning that horse, it does sum up the whole operation.
And he's exciting, isn't he, Skip Grey Dawning?
He is, yeah. He put in a big performance in the Hampton, didn't he, at the weekend? I think it sort of played out really nicely for him, the way Apple Away and Broadway Boy took each other on the front end, and he sort of just tracked them, didn't he? And it all worked out perfectly for him, which helped him record a good time and a good winning distance. I am a little bit concerned about him for his novice assignment at Cheltenham, the way that he made that bad mistake 2 out at Cheltenham 1 start ago, and the way that he jumped left under pressure when he was going clear at Warwick. I just wonder if he just needs to learn a little bit more before we see the absolute best of him in top level company. And he's certainly on my radar for, the 2025 Gold Cup. I think he could be that good, Grey Dawning, massive engine. But just a little concern about his jumping under pressure heading into Cheltenham.
Be forgiving of that mistake at Cheltenham. I thought, I'm not knocking Harry Skelton here, but it was developing into hey lads hey at that moment, and he sort of forced Grey Dawning to try and go really long 2 out, and it didn't go well for either. But I was really encouraged by the way he came on so strong after a jarring mistake, didn't he? I think his heart's in the right place. On the Skelton thing, David's made the case really well, and I'll try and add to it. He knows, Dan Skelton, that the heavy mob are going to roll in March, and they're heavier than ever. The Irish strength in depth. So his owners are getting bang for the buck in good races through December, January, and February. Grey Dawning is likely to run again in the Scilly Isles. He may meet Colonel Harry. More of him in a minute. But I think the Racing Post have had a good week in various departments. Peter Scargill wrote a piece, I think it was in the Front Runner last week. Didn't get a lot of traction. It should have done. I quote him. The BHA groups the best horses over jumps as those with a rating of 151 and higher. 46 such horses were registered as being in training in Britain last month. That compares to 95 in 2020. There just aren't that many good horses in Britain. They're vulnerable when the Irish come calling. Dan Skelton knows that there are some really valuable prizes, 50, 60, 70 grand prizes, that can be won by this type of horse. So Grey Dawning, if he goes to Cheltenham, I hope he does, will have had 4 novice chases. That's fairly aggressive campaigning for nowadays, and may well have picked up 6 figures in prize money. So hats off to Skelton. Brilliant day for him. 16 runners across the country, 6 winners. and at least one of them with Grade 1 potential.
The next step for Skelton at the festival, sorry, Dave, is having that week where he had 2 or 3 winners, including maybe a Grade 1, isn't it? Because he's very good at picking off the odd handicap. We've seen that in the county hurdle, but he didn't have a winner at the festival 2019, 2020, 2021, 3 years in a row, and then he won last year with Langerdan. Coincidentally, back down to his Coral Cup winning mark of 141 again after the weekend. And that's what we've come to associate with Dan Skelton, picking off these handicaps. But, you know, if he can go and win a Grade 1 at the festival, it's going to be a step up for him.
David, did he find a Grand National horse, Dan? Didn't win the Classic Chase, Galadez-Leto. Apologies pronunciation. I'm sure Billy would have picked me up on that scoop. It's French and Irish pronunciations, his speciality. But she ran a cracker in second, didn't she?
Yeah, she's got a new mark of 146, which... even obviously a 34 run a Grand National is very likely to think that she'll get into the race. And there's lots of reasons to like her for a race like that. You know, she's unexposed, she's improving. She's going to be suited by that kind of trip, isn't she, based on the way that she saw a race out at the weekend. So, yeah, if you've got a mare like that, there aren't really that many options for her against her own sex that are going to really provide her with a stiff test of stamina, are they? So, yeah, I think if she was mine, it's definitely the race I'd be looking at as well.
Now, GC, we've been looking at ways to stop horses getting the Grand National by limiting the number that a trainer can run in it. But an idea emanating from the Warwick press room on Saturday about a potential way of rewarding those who were gaining success after the lavish lunch when the weights have come out, potentially picking up penalties on the way to allow them to get into the entry show.
Yeah, I'd be interested to hear what you lads think about this, because we haven't discussed it in the build-up to this highly rehearsed podcast. But no, Stuart Machin, I think, is one of the... I think he's a fantastic pro, Stuart. I think he's a really good presenter. I think he's a brilliant race caller. But most of all, he's a really sensible... logical observer of horse racing. I wish they'd go to people like him to be on committees instead of 1 or 2 people who find the way on there, because he's vastly experienced. And his point is, made via Lee Mottershead in the Racing Post, is that we want the 34 best horses on April the 13th in the Grand National, not the 34 who were at the top of the weights on February the 20th, which is when the weights come out. And now we've gone from 40 to 34. It's a Jim Goldie phrase. I'll use it again. There is the potential for bed blockers in the National. Lots of horses who have a rating in the 140s, maybe 150s, that have whiskers on. They're not likely to be running to that rating anytime soon. And more up-and-coming horses who are maybe rated, you know, mid-130s or whatever, but with potential for improvement, have very little chance of getting in. Now, creating the penalty, reinstating the penalty system for a race like the National, be it £5, be it £7, would improve the chances of progressive horses, good horses, getting into the race, potentially well handicapped, even with the penalty. But the real knock-on effect is for races like, and I quote Lee Mottershead here, Kempton's Coral Trophy, Kelso's Premier Chase, Doncaster's Grimthorpe Chase, the Midlands National, and a number of contests at the Cheltenham Festival. You can possibly, don't know what Fran thinks, add a couple of Irish races into this that might become even more competitive if you had the chance of a 130 odd horse, 138 maybe, picking up the penalty that gets he or she into the Grand National. So what do you think, fellas? I can't really see a negative with an idea like this, and I'd love to see some progress made on it. What do you think?
Well, the problem with it is if you've already got a rating that would get you into the race, if you risk picking up a penalty, that's going to negate your chance of winning a national, isn't it? So whilst it would increase the possibility of those that wouldn't get in turning up, does it decrease the likelihood of those already likely to get in turning up?
Hadn't thought of that, but it doesn't really it doesn't really concern me too much. That I don't think that would be a massive risk myself.
I do think it needs freshening up. Do you think you need to get that ability to get horses in who aren't made when they pull the curtains in Liverpool on GC Saturday, February the 20th? We just counted the top 35. It's £1 million race, isn't it? The 6-day deck's coming. No horses move you. We can almost tell the final field from 3 weeks out.
Yeah, very much so. I think it'd be a very good idea, to be honest, as for all of the points Graham outlined about strengthening competition in the races through the build up to the national, and take David's point, but it's down to connections to be clever, whether they play the penalty system or run or don't run. Like it's down to them how to play it. And will it encourage people not to run the cross-country chase at Cheltenham if it risks costing them the Grand National? Maybe they'll roll the dice, run the Gold Cup, and if they win a Gold Cup, they'll take the penalty. But there could be, I think, in a lot of positive effects, and also it'll stop maybe people who are on the borderline of will I won't get into the national. It at least gives you an incentive to run and roll the dice. And yeah, I can definitely see more benefits and very little negatives. Yeah, and we might still have the odd horse running over hurdles en route to the national, but they're guaranteed to run.
What about doing it like sorry, GC. What about doing it like the Ebor, where they do a couple of races that are win and you're in, and the horses that win those races, they could qualify automatically and run off essentially bottom weight. So, if they were like a 130 horse that won one of those races and the bottom weight was 143, they could get in the national off 143 because they'd won a win and you're in race.
But you're giving the ticket to a lesser horse then, aren't you? A horse who's likely to still be a fair way out of the handicap, rather than one who's chiselled his or her way in. And the other potential benefit of this is from a PR and publicity and positive publicity point of view, it's a really good build-up angle, I think. When before the race, you're saying A, B, C, D, and E could all earn a golden ticket for the Grand National by winning this, yeah?
2 points I want to make very quickly. If you listen to the Breeders' Cup, of course, it's the road to Sky Bet Ebor races. It would be a road to the Randox Grand National race, not a winning.
Would any of them win and you're in races be running Ireland?
Road to.
Road.
The road to races, yes.
Come on, Fran.
Yeah, we'd have one in Ireland. And secondly, it make your dad's life a lot busier through the spring, Fran, if he was having to try to factor in penalties as he's looking at JP's entry squad. I mean, I don't know.
Heavier penalties for Irish winners.
Yeah, £10 penalties from Ireland.
Going to talk flat now. A couple of National Hunt flat horses and a flat race. Talk about the flat race that never was first, David. At Kempton, the all-weather action come riding to the rescue as Jack Frost starts biting. But we had a race at Kempton, they pulled the plug on, not enough entries. And it seemed as if connections of those who knew in advance this race was going to be in trouble.
Yes, so it was a 1.5 mile race for 3-year-olds. I think it was a 0 to 85 that only attracted 5 entries, one of which wasn't qualified, so only 4 could potentially run. I think one of them was declared to run at Wolverhampton on Monday, so didn't turn up in the decks on Wednesday for the Kempton race. So as part of the 2024 fixture list, there was an announcement that Class 4 handicaps and below of 3 or fewer decks will be cancelled. So, that's the case. And I was looking at it and I sort of got mixed views on this, because I can see why you don't want to bother with races that attract such small fields. They're not really of use to anybody bar the connections. But essentially, you are punishing the few that ended up supporting the race. And just think, sometimes you have to provide a kind of variety. You put on races that aren't necessarily the most levy-friendly on occasions. Horse racing, it is a sport after all, not just a betting product. And I think what would be better is if you ended up learning and think, well, you know what? We've seen before that these 1.5 mile races for 3-year-olds at the 0 to 85 level, they just aren't the horses around for them at this time of year. So we just won't put them on in future, rather than sort of snatching them away from those that did want to run at such a late time period.
Interesting. I think that expulsion tool we brandished a fair bit through the summer, as well as the field. So there's no sign of the horse population increasing, nor the fixture list decreasing significantly. So I can't believe it's not an issue that will return to. Let's talk bumper runners. Scoop, let's start with Maureen. I mean, I made a fool of myself with Patrick. Yes, I was saying how lovely it was to see a racing club owning such a lovely prospect, and transpires that she's leased from the Magnus. So I've got that one badly wrong. But she a bolt from the blue, seemingly. Great name, great pedigree, and I don't know what she means. It was a striking debut performance.
Yeah, Maureen, damn unraced half-sister to Forheen, so that's where the name comes from. And she might well have a bit of visibility as well, judging by Punchestown on Sunday, because she was great, wasn't she? The way she travelled and the way she put the race to bed, pulling away. I think she's been trimmed to 8 to 1, is it, for the champion bumper? And you can absolutely see why, because she couldn't really have done any more on racecourse debut, could she? So definitely one to look forward to in the future, whether that's at Cheltenham or somewhere else in the spring. But yeah, really exciting.
Man, it's a feature that I've said it a few times on this podcast. With his bumper team, just hasn't got going this year. They seem light on numbers. Lots of juvenile hurdlers still coming out and running. They seem light on bumper numbers. Is the fact that he is so light in that division the reason she's so short now?
Yeah, and she's very, very impressive, and I suppose with the breeding, Dave, and on the ownership, the Consultant Racing Club, really, really good weekend for syndicates, obviously in Ireland, with Mystical Power, who's owned by Magner McManus and Susanna Ritchie. It's good to see the good owner combinations pitching up there with smaller owners with nice horses over jumps.
It's all a chance, doesn't it? That's the beauty of this great game.
Exactly, and but it was good story of Maureen, and look, she looked very good. What she beat on the day, which you never really know, the bumper. On the Willie Mullins team, as you said, Dave, light enough at present. There's nothing that sticks out in your mind, and his top horse in the betting, Aurora Vega, obviously very well bred as well, has not been seen since September. I presume she'll go perhaps to Mare's bumper at the DRF. But when you go down through the betting for the Cheltenham bumper, there's nothing that sticks out. And maybe Maureen, a couple of the year for the mare, or the two mares, Aurora Vega, to pitch up at the festival as Willie Mullins' top two in the betting. I know you're going to talk about Romeo Coolio, Dave, but one horse to mention, who's currently a 20-1 best price for the bumper. Martin Brazel's got a nice prospect in Gold in the Mountains, who won, very impressive on the 26th of December at Leopardstown. Beat plenty of well-regarded horses. He's by Almans, who are really good flat pedigree. And for Martin to have a bumper horse winning at this stage of the career would allude to him being quite smart. Very interested in him if he goes to Cheltenham.
But just a line on Romeo Coolio, the dogs were barking. He made a winning debut. Gordon said he was just completely unsatisfactory test. He's a stayer. Nothing sorted. Did we learn anything? Because his point-to-point looked visually impressive too. It cost a fortune.
Yeah, he was weak in the market near the off, whether that was to do with Firefox and a couple of Gordons bombing out in the day. He went to 5-4 on track, I believe, but he did the job and he did it in good style. As you said, probably a messy race, a stiffer test, but could you back him on the strength of that one run going to Cheltenham? Probably not. I think outside of Gordon and the owners, the happiest man and people walking away from that bumper in Fairyhouse, the owners of the second Sporting Glory, Pat Fahey, Martin Cullinan, they're sellers, and I can see them quite pleased with the result. If he's the best horse in training, Romeo Coolio, to be second to him.
Yeah, you'd expect to be the new set of silks going on board him in the near future. Now let's talk British racing, GC. We need to get away from this action on the track and get to good old Britain. Constitution ill, it says in the running order. We now know he doesn't run in the Unibet International. He's not scoped satisfactorily. Cynicism, as you would expect in some quarters to the news, and just overall, just hugely disappointing.
Yeah, I can sum this up really quickly. I think the way this horse is being handled is sucking a load of joy out of what should and could be a very special story. Now, I've nothing else to say. You know my views on the way this bloke operates with his good horses. He seems to get more and more conservative as the years go on, and I find it a dead bore.
David, it is dull. It's dull to the fact that we're going to see the best potentially hurdler that we've seen in recent times run in a Christmas hurdle and a champion hurdle, and then you wouldn't even be 100% convinced he'd roll up at Aintree or Punchestown afterwards.
Yeah, and it sort of does show the problem of sort of when you pick and choose your options as much as what they have done, that you end up with a situation like, well, if he could scope poorly 2 weeks before he was supposed to run in January, he could do the same in March, couldn't he? So if you've got a fit and healthy horse, you should be running him when he's fit and healthy, because we've seen so often with these jumpers, they're so hard to keep sound, so hard to keep right, that we could easily end up a situation where we talk about Constitution Hill and we're saying, oh, how good could he have been? And we just never ever find out. And that'd be a crying shame.
And the frustration is, Scoop, you look at Stateman in Ireland, you know where he's going to go. The plan's in place throughout, and he doesn't miss a dab. Bang, bang, bang. That's the step. And the temptation just to have gone over for an Irish champion or Matheson Hurdle, or just do something different with him, just doesn't seem to cross their minds.
Well, that's the real shame, isn't it, here? Because we've got this outstanding racehorse, and okay, he scoped badly ahead of Trials Day. Well, the week after, it's the Irish Champion Hurdle. surely he'll be okay by then. Go over and take on Stateman in his own backyard and have potentially set up a rivalry that can go on into the champion hurdle. But of course, that's not going to happen. And we've all said it and we're all bored by it. And we just want to see more of him, don't we?
One thing we're going to see more of, JC.
I suppose sorry, Dave, just on that, and whatever happens between now and Cheltenham, but given Constitution Hill was probably out in fumes, running at Aintree over 2.5 miles, beating Sharjah 3 lengths. Any interest I have in a horse, if he doesn't pitch up in Punchestown, the Irish champion hurl, and they go there travelling, the owner's got a great history with Punchestown. Nicky's got a great history of Punchestown. If they don't go there, you lose all interest in him, because you give him a swerve, okay, champion hurl, number 1 to a point. But if they don't travel to Punchestown at the end of April, first week of May, or miss Aintree and don't run again, you just, you lose complete interest in the whole project, I think.
It's got to be Punchestown, hasn't it? That's got to be the end of the season. It's the comparisons with his previous horse I really struggle. Matthew Taylor, I like at the races, but using See You Then as an example of Henderson, this is what Henderson does. See You Then was a fragile horse that they could barely keep right for 3 weeks a year. I mean, they had to keep there's no indication this horse has got any fragility that we've been told in the public. Anyway,
he was going to win the Ascot Gold Cup last year.
It's when the welfare card comes out as well. That's increasingly tiresome. The welfare of the horse to run on testing ground, etc. It's just, come on, man.
Come on, man. One thing that's not going to go away, JC, is the media rights, the battlegrounds. Really good piece by Bill Barber in the Racing Post interview with Martin Cruddace of Arc Arena, who made it very clear that the trainers would not be running his business, which you could just go to play it like a Shakespeare play this, and you can just see the other groups in the corner beginning to take shape. This isn't going anywhere, is it, JC, this story?
Love this. Love it. I love his deliberate arrogance, which is what it was. Deliberately inflammatory comments about its people. And do you know what? The most inflammatory, read them. He's dead right. Economically illiterate. People who don't know anything about the business model, telling them what they should and shouldn't be doing. I'm not caping up for ARC here. I'm no particular fan of theirs. But read his comments and how he will not let a trainer tell him how to run his business, because he's absolutely right to point out courses like York and Ascot have income streams that are vastly, vastly more lucrative than any ARC race course can hope, dream of generating. And the thing I was interested in that wasn't really picked up on was when he said, he won't let trainers do this, and he talked about legal action. It's clear that the Sav, Peter Saville, has been riling up the base to try and take what you might term industrial action against ARC race courses if they're not deemed to be putting up sufficient prize money. I'm surprised that's not been fleshed out in the media. Maybe I've missed something. But I'm not a supporter of ARC or Cruddace, but I found this a fascinating, punchy front foot interview that's trying to make people understand his point of view, ARC's point of view, that there's a lot more to this than meets the eye. I have to say that they're putting up lots of money, hopefully this weekend at Lingfield. They've lost Friday already. But no, it's not going anywhere, this debate. I do think ARC, Jockey Club racecourses, etc., with perhaps one hand tied behind the back, are going to be persuaded to reveal more about the way their finances work. But I get where Cruddace is coming from here. A lot of people, ourselves included, are all too willing to tell these businesses what they should be doing in terms of prize money, etc. Most of us, in terms of businesses, haven't run a bath, let alone a business.
I thought the really interesting thing was the tone of the message, given that over the last 12 months, there's been a lot of talk about from the BHA about the unity and everybody, all these factions coming together and working for the greater good. And a lot of them have sort of been paying lip service to it. But, Cruddace has sort of gone the whole other way. And I mean, ARC, for a long time, they've had a poor reputation in terms of perception, in terms of what they take out of the sport to what they give back. And from a PR point of view, at the very least, I don't think this is going to help change that, is it?
No, he took out everyone, didn't he? He took out the trainers, he took out the armchair critics, he lit up Julie Harrington, etc. Great fun.
The great game continued. And yet there is news on prize money trickling through now. So we had JCR record prize money announced for extra transparency. Newbury up 7 million for 2024. That was announced this week. They're finding a few quid under the sofa, some of these race courses.
It seems to be that way, doesn't it, Dave? And especially with the A star racetracks, the likes of York and Newbury, Ascot, etc., which is pretty much the same old as it always has been, hasn't it? And it's the smaller tracks, it's the likes of the ones that have to rely on media rights and such to generate their business and generate the prize money that we worry about. And nothing's changed really in that regard.
You see, big article in the Sunday Times, David Walsh, a comment piece on Bryony Frost and the race's reaction to her after the bullying case and how the direction her career has taken. A lot of attention to a tweet to Neil Callan, who I know you know from your time in Hong Kong, but he's on the PGA board. What do you make of both strands of this story?
Yeah, full disclosure, I like Neil. I get on well with him. We message each other quite a lot, generally about football. He's Liverpool, I'm Man City. But he's a bit of a loose cannon on matters like this. And let me be crystal clear. This tweet from him, I've got it here. I might as well, get the tweet here. Let's have a see. It was in response to the David Walsh article about racing burying a treasure in Bryony Frost. David's position, not mine. Callan said, if this was a young male jockey being bullied, would it have the same courage and attention? I think not. Hashtag say what everyone else is thinking. Well, for a PGA board member, Dave, to put on a public forum something as tone deaf as that, it's embarrassing, but it's not quite as embarrassing as the mealy-mouthed way that most of the racing media have reacted to it. They turned the other cheek. In fact, they just turned in the opposite direction rather than... We had a news story with, I don't think, a byline on in the Racing Post, which was fine. We had Catherine McRae, a young up-and-coming female journalist on the Post, who did a solid job of stressing how little progress she thinks has been made since the Bryony Frost bullying case, which was meant to radically change the culture of the weighing room. But I don't think this is about bullying. I think it's about old-fashioned sexism. Ask Charlotte Jones about how difficult it is to get rides from outside yards, even when you're shooting the lights out for your own stable, Jimmy Moffat. But from my own media point of view, I just find it embarrassing how we're prepared to just snort and say, oh, it's Neil, that's what he's like, and keep it moving. Because if I'm on that board and I put out a tweet like that, as inflammatory, as tone deaf as that, I don't expect a mild slap down from the governor. I'm probably expected to be clearing my desk.
Yeah, and you've got GC said that. We're going to end on the week that Sporting Life's Globetrotter Adam Houghton, Sporting Life Time Films Globetrotter, left the company, scoop open the gate for more global travel for others. Fran, sad news coming through. Racing in Macau, joined racing in Singapore has coming to an end. How big a news, how worrying a piece of news is that?
Dave, it's not a surprise, I suppose, when you know people over there, the way the product has declined in the last 15 years, in particular in Macau. It's a big worry for racing. I think, it's a long way away from where we are now, but I think it's a worry for us as a sport, but for the locals involved and racing in Asia. When you see Singapore gone in next October, isn't it? And Macau, now the announcement it's going to be finished up in April, mainly through bad management. It was poorly managed in Macau for a long time. When I was there, I did 2 winters, 2003, 2004, and it had real potential to be Hong Kong, a mini Hong Kong, and it was really thriving, doing well, top jockeys, top trainers there, and it made me a far better rider riding against the likes of Nashua Will or Olivia Deleuze, who were all based here for the winter stints. And the track itself, small, sharp, quick reflexes, a really good education. And with the market with China opening up and 3-day visas to Macau, I thought it was going to go really, really strong and be a really good product. But as I said, through bad management, lack of interest, and when the late Stanley Ho, who was the linchpin of Macau racing, passed away a couple of years ago, it's really declined quickly. For example, Dave, there was 1,000 horses when I was there. It was racing 2 days a week, full fields. It was down to 1 day a week with a couple of hundred horses and no fresh imports. So it's a very, very sad loss. And I think, with Asia, Macau, the casinos came in a couple of years after I was leaving. They were just being built, the big Las Vegas casinos, and the land pressure that you have with small areas of land with Macau and Singapore. There is that pressure, but it's just a big loss. I think, it just tightens up the game internationally, and you just worry where the next one is coming. Okay, Hong Kong, Japan are very strong in Asia, but with the exception of perhaps Malaysia, which is a bit of a wild west of a racing fiefdom, if you like, it shrinks the global pool, and I'm very sad to see it happen. But I do think it's a lesson for us all that you can never take things for granted.
Yeah. If it's not
You've
loved,
obviously worked in Hong Kong.
if it's not loved and managed, it can wither. Now, I don't think that's anywhere near a danger, short or medium term here or in Ireland. That I'm very optimistic about the sport overall, much more optimistic than some. But if sports aren't managed and loved and supported, dangerous things can happen. So it is a sad thing. I've been to Macau. I haven't been racing in Macau, but Fran's right about the jockeys who've gone on to fantastic things, having polished their skills in Macau. John Moreira being another one, Fran, who came through Macau and Singapore before he hit the heights in Hong Kong. So it's multifaceted, this, but you feel for the people involved, and probably even more importantly, what happens to the horses? Making sure all those Singapore and Macanese horses are given proper homes after they're no longer race horses. Most of them is going to be very tricky.
Yeah, it's sad news there to end the podcast, but that is us done for the week. Thanks to GC, to Ben, to Fran, and to David. We'll be back next week looking ahead to Festival Trials Day, because looking at John Ketley's bespoke forecast, we've got westerly winds, strong westerly winds, temperatures in the double figures, and rain. So waterlogging will be the threat next week, but we will be back to look ahead to what should be an informative card at Cheltenham. Thank you for listening, and fingers crossed that John is right and that we've been overly pessimistic about this weekend too, and that we do see some quality action.
Sporting Life, the home of the expert racing tipsters, including Matt Brocklebank's Value Bet, Rory Delaghi and Dave Massey's Punting Pointers, Fran Berry's Irish Focus, and Simon Holt's TV Preview.